Hello. I am now live. Let's see. Hello. Let's see if I can get my dashboard up. Great. Turn my sound off. Hi, Angela. Welcome. See, there's a few other people here. So it's a little bit before 7. Actually, what I wanted to do first was do a little bit of touching up on the painting that I was working on last night, so that we could just I could have something that I can keep in the video when it loads up permanently, and you guys are just not sitting around doing nothing. So what I wanted to start to do was there's a couple of key areas that I wanted to improve upon, and see, mix the color there. If you look, there's in the fill trim of her nose, I have it over a little bit too far in the base of her nose the other direction. They're about where they need to go. Can you guys hear me okay? I may need to take my phone cover off if you can't. Hello? Angela, can you hear me? Yes. Do you want to hear me better? No? Okay. I think it's probably fine with the phone cover on, but do you know what? I'm going to take it off if it's not going to be too disruptive. Everything is moving. Everything is moving. Yep. And we're great. We're back. You guys dizzy yet? Okay. So the sound should be a little bit better. I'm going to re-plug in my charger. Come on. Go in. My charging cable doesn't want to go in. Okay. Oh, I see. Cheap charger. Okay. So sound should be a little bit better now, hopefully. Okay, so I'm just going to make a little adjustment there, just by moving this over a little bit. And we have still a few minutes, so if I can continue to do this until 7. Okay, that actually looks a little bit better. And then also I wanted to soften the turn of the jaw here a little bit. I had all day to look at this and decide which things I wanted to not touch and which things I wanted to do. And a little bit in her forehead, I wanted there to be a little bit more orange in the transition. That's right there before it goes into the red. So it's going from too green to too red too quickly. And trying to think if there was anything else. I think I wanted to cut her hairline a little bit here. Just give it a little bit sharper edge at that point. And then there was one more thing. There's her black shoulder, her blouse underneath the scarf. it's just dipping down a little bit here and it doesn't look connected to the neck. So I wanted to make sure that this came up just a little bit higher there. And I think that's it. It's 7:01. Those are the changes I wanted to make. So we are going to start fresh with a new board. Okay, put that somewhere safe. Okay, now we're back and we have our new image. That's Austheia. She's a art student from Lithuania, and she has a really good color sensibility. And she's I got her image off of Sketchy, but I've also had a chance to see the artwork that she's posted to Sketchy, and her photography work. Both are very nice. And let me get her to the right size to begin with. And placed. Come on. Great, that's better. Okay. So, unfortunately, because I'm doing a square format this week, you're not going to be able to see the image quite as well as I did last week. But that's okay, just as long as you can see the painting that I'm working on pretty well. I know this is a little distorted, so but that's not too bad. Okay, so how's that looking out there in TV land, YouTube TV land? Okay, that doesn't look too bad. I think I want a little more lighting on my panel, so I can adjust the lights a little bit. Yeah, I think that's good. And off we go, off to the races, as they say. So again, I want to do things like I want to place the eyes. Let me adjust this one more time. Makes it a little easier for me to paint on if it's sitting on top of the brackets. Okay, and a little bit of adjust. Sorry for all the mucking around. That does. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, you guys should be pretty dizzy by now. I have a little bit of a new camera mount that I'd ordered after my other one was being held together by rubber bands. I decided I needed to get a little more professional, so I bought the cheapest one I could. And it actually works pretty well, except that it's a little bit bouncy. If I just bump it, you can see. So hopefully I won't bump it too much as I'm working. So I'm going to start by measuring her placement of her eyes. So you can try to catch the corner of where the edge of her eye is and the height that it comes down. This part I know is can be a little boring, tedious to watch, but it's I found this very invaluable in terms of getting the thing moving along quickly. So that's going to give me an idea from edge to edge. No, I don't have something right. Okay, yes, I have a bad measurement in there because my picture was slid over. So let's try this again. With a little bit longer brush too. Okay, so yes, I am in the wrong place. I did this once where I didn't realize it until I was most of the way through the setup of the painting that I actually had the wrong size panel, and I couldn't figure out like where my measurements were, why they were so far off. And then I looked at the panel and it was like, that's crazy. That's completely the wrong size. That's better. And let's do the outer edge too, where the tear duct is. That's going to be right around there. So that's pretty good. And then I can measure the distance in between the eyes there. And as long as I have it at the right height, that's going to give me the right setup. So you can see that the second eye is a little bit more in perspective. So it's slightly shorter. And then there's the curve of the face there, of the upper cheek, and underneath the brow makes this nice swoop shape. And I am measuring again from the wrong place, excuse me. Okay, so I would love to have some huge monitor that I can have when I do these larger paintings, that I can see it all at once, and that would save me a little bit of pain. And okay, so let me put my chat over too so I can see you guys a little bit better too. You still with me there? I see that there's looks like there's 3 people that have joined in. That's fine. Probably scared a few people off with the roller coaster motion. And I want the height to the bottom of her jaw here. Okay, I'm almost there. Distance to find the location of where the ear meets the side of her face. That's doesn't look right, but I think it is. I have a little bit of that leftover marking from the other eye, so that's going to throw me off a little bit. And it's also much lower, so yeah. So that should be there. Let's see. Take a little bit, rub that back a little bit. That'll help. Okay. So I also have this distance here. I won't be able to get the angle exactly, but that looks about right. And I can approximate the rest of the face, the hairline. But getting those things right eventually will help. If you look at the shape of the hollow of her eyes in the photo, she has a very distinct shape to it. It's almost like a figure 8 that comes around here. It's the underneath part of the eye. Then there's a turn where the nose is. But if you follow that shape through, comes around, there's where the light's hitting. It's actually the reflection of the sky in the upper part of her cheek. And then if you follow that through that brow, and then that comes across this side here. So if I get all those relationships right, that will be helpful. And of course, it doesn't matter what color I'm painting at this point, because it's all going to get covered with much wetter or thicker paint. I think I need the base of her nose. The septum of her nose is slightly higher than, at least at this angle, than the wings of her nostrils. So that's one characteristic of her face that I want to make sure that I catch, because that will give it that will help in the likeness, getting that likeness. She has a very sharp highlight on her nose, and also that shape of the base of her nose. That's right there, the base coming down. But like I said, the wings of her nose come down a little bit, and I want to pay attention to that. And then just want to indicate where her upper lip is. Again, getting the right shapes and placement of things is very helpful in that sense of likeness. I can see I had pushed the side of the the line of her nose over a little bit too far, so I'm going to see if I can correct a little bit for that. And it's worth measuring again, make sure I have the placement of her lips correct. That looks right. And get the bottom swoop right too. Someday I'm going to invest in a pair of calipers, but I'm not sure it actually would make this process any faster. The calipers, they just kind of look like a large compass that has sort of points that you spread apart. And you actually, some of them have two sides that you can adjust the distance between, so that if your painting and your subject aren't the same size, you can make it a ratio. But right now I'm actually happy with measuring with the brush, so I'm gonna do that for a while. And we can see her cheek. The apex of her cheek is in line with the tip of the nose, or maybe a little bit lower. And the hollow of her cheek is just about just a little bit below where the lips are. And then there's the you can see it's actually a separate shape as the edge of the jaw, and then that comes into this other form, the chin. So getting that contour right is very helpful in creating that sense of dimension. I'm going to adjust it probably quite a bit by the time I'm done with the painting, but it's good to pay attention to it because it does aid in making sure that everything is in the right place to begin with, or close to the right place. And with the hairline, a lot of times something, an edge will look straight or close to being straight, or where color changes will have a straight edge. But if you look at it carefully, a lot of times there's a lot of changes in direction and shape, or combinations of forms that make up that what seems to be somewhat of a straight edge. And so just drawing it as a straight edge in a way will flatten out your piece. You really do have to see where there actually is a direction change in some of those forms. I'm just going to put in a little purple here just because it helps me establish an idea of that color that's going up there. It actually looks pretty dark right now, but as I put in some of my the rest of my colors, it will seem closer to being right. There's also this green reflective light that's coming in here. I'm just going to throw that in, and let me take some of my brushes out here so they're not rattling around. Sorry, I bumped the camera. And don't want anyone throwing up by the end of this from all the movement. So I want enough room to get the brightness of that orange, reddish orange. And when I say enough room, I mean it's hard, if it goes too light, it's hard to get the intensity of the color. So I have to make sure that the colors around it are dark enough, so that I can still come in with a darker value here where there's this color, and have it still seem like it's light. And it's going to be tough. That's going to be one of the challenges of this painting, is to have the shadows dark enough so that these hits of high key color, that I'm able to paint them with enough intensity. So part of the aspect of this photograph that really attracted me is that sense of luminosity where you have, she has rim lighting or halo. Well, it's really from the side, so it's not halo lighting, but rim lighting on her. This is the looks appears to be the sunset. I assume that it is that. She photographed herself outdoors during the sunset, and that is that bright orange color that's also hitting her hair that's dyed red. So it's sort of a double whammy there. And that is going to be a challenge to get that high key color in that in the lighter part of the image. I see Anne here. Hey, welcome. Yeah, for Anne that just joined in, this is a photo of a young artist named Austheia, Austheia, or Austheia rather. Hopefully I'm pronouncing her name right. Austheia, and she's Lithuanian, and she is not only an artist on Sketchy, but she also is a photographer, and this is a self-portrait that she did. But I am, when this video is finally posted, I'm going to put links to her Flickr account and to her Instagram account so everyone can go and see her artwork. It's, I think it's outstanding. And but she has lots of great photos to work with on her Sketchy account because she took a lot of the photos herself, and they're really well done. And it says on her Flickr account that she's a student, but I don't know if that is still true or if she is a working artist at this point. Let me just, I'm going to measure again real quick, make sure I'm not wildly off on these. That looks pretty close. If it's not too far off, I can make little adjustments later. Okay, these panels that I'm using are, I'm trying to remember the brand, but the brand that I like to use, which is Speedball Mona Lisa panels, don't have this, carry this 12 by 12 size, and and neither in the value series for ampersand, they didn't have it either. In the finish that I like, in the value series, they have both a canvas texture and a smooth texture, and they didn't have that size. And then when I looked at the gesso board, which is the other model that they make, ampersand makes, this 12 by 12 started to run in the $10 to $20. And I just wanted something that I felt like I could mess up and not feel like I was throwing money out. So I looked into these other panels that are called student sketch or something. And they're fine. They're hardboard panels. They do have a little bit of a texture to them, and on top of that, I've put the gesso, partially the gesso to get rid of some of the cover over some of that texture, but that has made the panels very absorbent, very dry. So it's hard for me to get a lot of paint down easily. You can probably hear it. It's makes a little bit of a scratchy sound. And okay, I'm going to try to bring the value up a little bit to get that sense of lightness, and do a little bit of adjustment at the same time. I do have my I want to say my trump card, but I don't want to use that word these days. Um, I have a color, my quinacridone red, which gives me a little more punch if I need it, because it's such a strong color. And if I ever get into too much trouble, I can fake it a little bit by going a little bit cooler than um, than maybe the orange that's in the image. Sort of all over, it's an orange red in the light area. So I can anywhere between the cool reds and even a little bit into the yellows, I can work back and forth to try to get the color intensity and the right hue. But this is all about trying to get as long as the values are correct, trying to get the intensity of color that I see in the photograph. And again, I have to make sure that keeping my shadow side dark enough so that I can maintain that sense of luminosity. Okay, and she has a little bit of red reflecting back into her nose too. I want to make sure I get that both in the shadow side and in the light side. It'd be nice if I could just go pure red here. If the shadow side was dark enough, it would support that. So I may decide at some point to try to push those shadows even darker. They're starting to actually look like they have too much white in them. So as I go along, I'm going to be pushing as much as I can to go darker with those. This also, for the reflected light here, the tip of the nose is reflecting back sky, and that's a little bit lighter than the shadow around it. So to get that to read, I have to get the rest of the shadow to go a little even darker. I always say when something doesn't look like it's right in your painting, you can do one of two things. You can correct it, that specific color value, that area of the painting, or you can correct everything else around it. And sometimes it's the right thing to correct everything else because it would make the most sense to try to keep that color and value that you have for the structure of the painting. So so I actually did a little bit of both right there. I made the colors around it a little bit darker, and I made that bluish reflective light. I just went a little bit lighter with it. There's still room for me to get more color. I just went too dark there. But that's pure phthalo blue and the titanium white there. And I can see that's pretty close to where I want to be. Okay. If some of you that haven't chimed in yet, I'd love to know where you're viewing from. So I do on my Instagram page. I have about half of my followers are inside the United States, and then the rest are all over the world. Unfortunately, the time that I picked to do these is in the middle of the night for all those people that are in Europe, Eastern Europe, and in the Middle East, and some of Central Asia. And so, at some point, I might do some of these live ones. I will. I'm pretty set on keeping this one on Tuesdays, but on the weekends, I might try to do just as a spot, not really announced, as do ones during the day, so that if any of my audience that are in different time zones normally can't watch or join in, and if they happen to be online, they'll get a notice. And but I can't really plan those out in advance. I just have to see what a day is like. If it's something that if I'm going to be painting anyway, that I'll and I have a chunk of time that I can do it, I'll just go live. And but we'll have to see. But I think I like the time that this one is. It's a good time in the week for me. There is going to be a point in the summer where I know there's a couple of weeks in a row I'm not going to be able to do it. Um, I have Sharkim. Is that your? I wonder if that's your first name. From Trinidad. Oh, that's great. Glad to welcome. That's I think Trinidad maybe an hour different from this, or maybe the same time zone. Chakram says, very helpful. I try to do painting in oils before I leave work. I understand the challenge you are talking about. Yep. I I'm starting to do something a little bit new. Um, oh, not my first name. Yes, 1 hour different. Great. Um, the all the paintings that I did last year, my average painting time was maybe about 6 to 8 hours per painting. And before I started really doing YouTube or doing as much social media, um, that was fine because I wasn't doing any other activity besides painting. And now that I'm getting more involved in YouTube and trying to do the live channel, producing videos, that's sort of eating into my painting time. And but I'm also finding that I need to just be kind of quicker with my paintings. Because I paint in the style, this Alla prima style. And one of the nice things about painting that way is all the brush work that's in there. And especially if I'm trying to use bigger brushes, which I'm actually switching to a bigger brush right now. Um, that looseness, if I paint too long and I'm trying to adjust the values too much to get it to look too much like the photo, for many reasons, is to give myself a time limit on my paintings. So with the live stream, obviously I have to pay attention to the attention span of my audience, and I know some people will come in and out as I paint, and some people will stay through the whole thing. But sorry for all the ums. I'm going to work on that too. And there it came. There was another Just can't help it. One of the things that I want to do is force myself to paint faster. A lot of nice things happen early on in some of my paintings, and because I have allow myself a certain amount of time, then I find that I keep on working into some of those areas, and I lose some of those initial nice strokes. But also, if I have a tighter time limit, I try to be more efficient with the brushwork and more exact. And that that is a very good reason for me to give myself some of that restriction. But it also means if I'm spending 10 hours a week, let's say, producing content for YouTube, producing videos, usually the editing after the painting is done. And I used to spend 25 hours a week painting, then all of a sudden I only have 15 hours. I don't know, 25 hours a week. That maybe it's closer to 20. But anyway, so you can see very quickly how that would cut into um, my painting time, which I find that's the whole point, is having to being able to do the paintings. And um, so Anne says that her Wi-Fi unfortunately has too much lag to it, so she's not going to watch it tonight. But I this will be reposted, so she'll be able to watch it later on. So good night, Anne, if you can still, if you're still on. Thanks for joining in when as long as you could. Um, so so if I, instead of spending 6 hours per painting, I'm spending 2 or 3 hours, then with that 10 to 15 hours I have less left to paint, instead of doing 2 paintings, let's say, then all of a sudden I'm able to do closer to 4 paintings. And quantity isn't everything, but I kind of feel like part of my goal is to improve my skills, and doing doing more tries at painting is very useful in doing that. Having the opportunity to make more mistakes, try more ideas. There less learning happens, I think, in those in the last 2 or 3 hours of the painting. It's all about just doing fine adjustment and looking back and forth, which is fine. But if you just spend too much time doing that, then you're sort of losing the skills to get it down correctly the first time. So that's why I'm thinking about just giving myself time limits. I am going to, there's this dark edge to her hair in between her face and where the part of her hair that's in light. And I need to put that in because that's one of my darkest darks. And that's going to help me see if I'm in the right value range. So I'm just getting some of that. It's kind of it's goes between purple and black. And again, I said I have to pay attention to this contour because this is what is going to give the volume. If I look at the side of her cheek here and this point here, which is the soft form around her mouth, conceptually, I just see this as a flat line. The graphic line is just carving, into the shape of her face. But I also have to think about it is that this part of the cheek is further back than the mouth here. And, or this is actually one form in front, and then there's a line underneath her cheek. It's coming towards us. And then that form around her mouth is another form. Let me see. I can't really see what you see here. Make sure you see it. So this is another form, and then this is coming forward again, and then there's this form in front. So I have, if I just draw it as circles, it's easier for me to think about it conceptually and easier for you to see it. This is one form here. This is the chin. Then there's a line between the chin and her jaw. Let me just get the right colored paint here to adjust this. And then there is another line here between the it's more or less the hollow of the cheek that's coming forward, and then there's this. So we just do a little bit of outline on this form so we see it. So you got one form, you have this other form sitting behind it, and then you have the form of the cheek itself, and you do have the upper edge of the lip here. So if I'm not really paying attention, then all of this just looks like a line from this point to here, pretty much a straight line. But there's all that information that's happening there, and unless I have all those curves in the right place or accentuate them a little bit, then the painting starts to flatten out a little. So this is where really have to think 3D and pay attention to that. This is also turning there, even though I kind of have a straight line between the shadow and the light in her face. I have to pay attention that there's a turn in there. Also, what's going to help give it a little dimension is there's this orange, yellow reflection from the sun right on her cheek there. I have to go even lighter. And that's going to give some key information, the how hard and smooth the skin is on her cheek and its ability to reflect light, and also the quality of the light is, again, this is setting sun. So what I'm not seeing here is enough value change between this is the light side and the shadow side here. So again, I have to make sure I keep my shadows dark enough. I have to keep on pushing them darker because that's, again, what's going to give me room to get that sense of luminosity in the light side of her face. And I don't know if that's starting to read for you guys there that are watching. Let me see on my better monitor if I look at what you guys are seeing. That is hello? Hello? Hi, I'm sorry. I am back here. Had some problems, some technical difficulty. Hello? Hello? Can you go? Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I did not have my do not disturb on, and I got an incoming call, and that knocked me offline. And so hopefully, let me just put on the do not disturb, see if, okay. Um, yeah, sorry. Hopefully, I see a couple people dropped off. Hopefully, you'll come back. So, um, so let me keep on going. Oh boy, really having problems here. Okay, let me just type something here. Yes. Okay, so 4 people are back on. Okay, so sorry about all that issues with the lag, and hopefully improve. I got a call in, it knocked me offline, and it also affected my Wi-Fi, so then I wasn't able to reconnect very easily. Um, it's fuzzy, so you guys are probably getting a little bit of like lower resolution or something, maybe because the quality of my Wi-Fi. Hopefully, that'll improve. If not, I can always restart the whole thing and and then somehow have two separate videos, which I loathe to do, but let's try to keep it as one. So I was saying, to keep the quality of the light, I need to make sure that I'm going dark enough in the shadows. I can already see this. Her eye on that side is a very dark blue, even in the white part of the eye. So I need to kind of start off um, pretty dark, and then keep on working in darker from there. Make sure that I'm keeping my accents dark enough. So so the lighting situation I have here is her face is mostly in shadow, but there's a lot of interest going on in the shadow, and then the light side of her face is just this rim lighting from the sun, and there's not as much interest in terms of the information there, but it's important to still keep some of the information there to get that sense of the quality of the light. And and like I said before, I have to make sure that I am pushing to keep the shadow side dark enough. That's the will be the key to keeping the that sense of light. I am going to put in just an indication of the background here. So that again goes pretty dark. I'm going to use as little white in that as I can. And then the hair, what's going to help me a little bit with the hair is trying to keep some of that paint transparent, because if I'm trying to get it as lighted as it is by adding white to it, I'm going to be killing the intensity of the color. So it's the transparency that's going to help me out here. And luckily, this quinacridone red is a transparent color, so I can lay it down as a tint and it should be extremely vibrant. And then those other colors that I have, the permanent orange and the naphtha red, are semi-transparent colors. They're almost opaque, but if I go thin enough, then they should have a fair amount of transparency, fair amount um, of brightness to them. And then up against that, I have my blues. I have to keep those dark. And so I can see pretty much right now I'm in the right value range. We're pretty close to it. Um, so that's close to the setup here. That cheek is still a little bit too dark, and I may have to do a similar thing where I'm bringing in some transparent colors to get that level of intensity. I'm going to lose that little bit of highlight that I put in there, but that's okay. I can always paint it back in. Okay. Okay. And That lower lip has a lot of purple in it. It's really pretty, some of the colors in here. Um, Unusual um, colors that in the shadow side are going so purple or violet and orange yellow or red orange in the on the light side of her face. Not not perfect compliments like you would expect to see, um, because probably she's getting a lot of reflected light into the shadow side. She definitely has the blue sky hitting every form that's facing upwards, and then downwards it just seems to be more like purplish grays. Now I'm doing a little bit of scrubbing, which is not really getting the kind of nice flowing brushwork that I would like. But like I said, the surface is so absorbent and has so much tooth to it. I really have to work hard to um, get the paint, or get enough paint down to, um, how do I say it? I'm kind of feeding the surface there with paint, and it's taking a lot of paint to do that. If I if I wanted to, I could sand the surface a little bit more, and the paint would go down a lot easier. The trouble with sanding the surface is that then you start to get a little bit of slickness, and then you have a hard time getting the paint to come off the brush and getting the paint to stay on the surface. So there's sort of that happy medium somewhere where the there's enough absorbency and tooth to get the paint down, but not so much that it's soaking it all up like a paper towel. I know she has a little bit of green in here. I think that I'm going too green, but that's okay. That's something I can adjust easily. Again, I want to make sure that that's dark enough in there. Here, let me move up the bottom there so I can see what I'm dealing with. Okay. We have some of the, besides the call coming in, which is the cellular, my cellular data taking over and affecting my Wi-Fi. I just think our router, sometimes the Wi-Fi kind of drops out, and you either have to restart the Wi-Fi in the router, or you have to kind of go into airplane mode to be able to get the and then turn the airplane mode on and then off, on and then off again, so that it reestablishes the Wi-Fi connection. And that's actually what I had to do to get you guys back, or to get the video going again, because it was it bumped me off on the call, and then I kept on trying to get back on. Okay. Now you can see I have like the purples in the cheek here, and I have the blue reflecting the sky. I have some of the purple again underneath the eye, but my transitions are kind of really rough. I think that's okay right now. At some point in the painting, I'm going to go through and I'm going to give the come over with more color instead of trying to blend everything. What I would like to do is keep on putting down uh, adjacent strokes of paint that have the right value on it until the form feels right. Um, One thing I've been trying to get away from is blending too much, and because that's what's nice about oil paint. It's very easy to blend. What's not nice about oil paint is it's very easy to blend, because it can make paintings look really dull that are over blended, and it's very tempting to do. There is a time where blending is the right solution to get that right amount of softness, but and you can get a certain really neat effects with the paint. But if you're trying to hold on to a certain amount of color and uh, real clear brush strokes, then blending doesn't really help you with that. It does help you if you really want an edge that has a beautiful softness to it, is you can just go and have two colors next to each other and then just work back and forth until you get this really nice soft edge. So the painting really, a good painting really requires sort of both approaches. I don't have, I tend not to have enough variety of edges in my painting. By the time I'm done, everything has sort of a nice crispness to it. That's usually because the photos I'm picking have a crispness and crispness. Sorry, not Christmas. They have a nice crispness to it. Um, and so I'm just in a way copying that of the photo. I did do an image recently of, it's called Rainbow Girl, where the whole background is very soft, and I worked really hard to keep that softness from the photo, and it had this very nice effect. But the fact of the matter is that I can get that effect in any painting, regardless of whether that's the information in the photo or not. And the reason why that photo works so well is because, and the painting from that photo worked really well, is because the information that was important was in sharp detail, and then everything else started to become very soft and out of focus, and it really forced your eye to look at the things that were important in that painting. So I have a question from Shayna. Thank you for the question, Shayna. The question is, do you mix your colors beforehand or as you go? And I'm one of those painters that I mix the colors as I go. I'm making the color that I put out on the palette from my tube. I call piles of color, and then I'm making pools from that pile, little pools that are all over my palette. I have a glass palette, and as I'm working in and out of different pools, mixing them together. I have a color that I want to achieve, and I look for that color that's already mixed, or I'm adding from one pool to another to try to get closer to the color that I want. And my color perception between the palette and the painting is pretty good. I have a nice neutral color underneath my glass, so that helps me judge the colors a little bit better. I would recommend, if you're working on a palette that's a bright white color, I would look to find ways to tone that to more of a middle neutral, because that will really help you in judging values better. I know other artists that they also will tone their panel before they start, or the canvas before they start, close to that same color. So what they have is the panel and the palette are both have a similarity to them that allows them to very closely um, match the colors. But I find that I'm able to do it pretty well with, even with a white panel, because I just know about how light or dark the colors should be as I'm going at it. Like I said, that shadow, I know I need to keep it dark, so I should have started off a bit darker than I did, but I'm just, as I'm working, I'm knocking back the value so that it stays dark enough. Um, and I'm doing a little bit more of that right now. This means that I have to limit the amount of white that I have in the paint. And I also have to squint a lot. So that upper lip that has the blue coming into it, and that's sort of a little bit of a greenish blue, that has to be darker. And the reason why it has to be darker is because it's starting to get as light as the light side. About getting the right value structure in the painting to get, especially this one is a real challenge because of all the narrow value range that's in the shadows and how dark the shadows have to be to support the light side of the face. I know, let me know if I'm sounding a little bit like a broken record here, but I think this is because this is what I know I have to kind of keep on reinforcing as I paint that this is what's in my head as I'm painting is keep it dark, keep it dark, keep it dark. Um, I'm trying to kill some of this white color that may be affecting my perception here. And again, I'm going to try to put this in fairly transparently so that I'm able to get the how high key that color is. Okay, I'm thinking that generally pretty good with the value ranges. I want to keep on working, getting some of her hair in so that I'm framing those colors so I can really see it. And also I need to adjust some of the drawing. I can see that the distance of her forehead is a little bit off. I know from experience that I'm a person who grows foreheads. That means that um, in my proportions when I'm drawing and when I'm painting, I naturally make the forehead higher than it should be. So I need to be aware of that and compensate as I do it. So I see Anne has a comment about resisting using any hard edges only when she wants to draw the viewer's eye there, and that is what I need to work towards. It's something. It's a goal of mine because I pick photos that I like, and I may like them for of various reasons, but the variety of edges in the photo may not be um, ideal for doing just that, for drawing the viewer's eye. And so I have to be more conscious of that and um, and soften things, soften areas that aren't where I want the viewer to go. I don't know if you're familiar with a painter named Casey Baugh. I really don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Baugh. Um, he's a very prolific portrait artist, and he does more like gestural paintings, but very realistic gestural paintings. And he starts off his paintings by almost making an out of focus version of the painting where there is no detail. He just has all the values, shapes in the right place, but everything's very soft. And then as he works, he adds definition, moves things around, compares a lot. He works mostly from photos that he takes himself of the model. So he does a lot of composing in that phase, and then some softening of edges in Photoshop before he actually starts to do any of the drawing or painting. And so in Photoshop, you can see that he's doing a lot of that work, deciding which edges should be hard and soft. But then when he does actually start off the drawing process, he makes everything, keeps everything soft. So if you see a progression of his work, and some of that's posted, I think, on his website, that he, it looks like, literally, it looks like an out of focus um, photograph, and then each progression looks like it's just slightly more in focus. You have to excuse me. I have the hiccups, and I did pour myself a glass of water. Hold on a second. Hold on. I'm back. I poured myself this big glass of water, but I left it in the kitchen. Hopefully that will help my hiccups. So we're just taking a look at the time. So we're about an hour in. I do expect that I will finish this painting in another hour and a half. So hopefully sooner, but we'll see. But I'm giving myself that time limit. With the last two paintings I did do some touches offline after the the session was over, because I just found that I just needed that little bit of extra concentration to do the finish, and so it was just too hard to do while I was live to do that. But it wasn't a lot. I didn't do a lot of. I think the last one, the values weren't tying together very well. And if you look at where the demo ends and the finished version of the painting that I posted, you can see that I just simplified some of the values, did a little bit of blending, and put in some transitional coloring, so that um, so that the blotchiness sort of took care of the blotchiness that was in my values. So when I work, I'm just painting kind of one color at a time next to another color, and I'm trying to get the right colors and values. But sometimes that approach um, means that there'll be some areas where the colors aren't they're not tying together right, and and it's not representing the form quite right, and so that just takes a little bit of refinement to um, it's basically creating values in the value structure that kind of lock in together, so that for example, from the far edge to the cheek to the nose, all these values have to be in the right location and the right value to make it feel like you're feeling that form wrap around. And I can see these transitions are they're just too jumpy right now, and and your eye isn't able to pull it together. And so that takes a little bit of work refining those values before all those forms start to pull together. And that may not be something that I can always do during the demo, because of the how um, how much concentration and refinement that takes to get it there. It's just because it's a lot of times it's just very subtle kinds of changes that that's required, and maybe at some point, if my demo skills get better, I'm able to do more of those refinements on camera. But but it does take a good deal of effort. Okay. So I see this looks like it's going much lighter here, and but what I'm missing is when I always say you can adjust that thing or the thing next to it, and I think it's the thing next to it that really needs adjustment because there's this fairly dark purple that's coming in here that's helping define that cheek, and then it has this soft edge that's a step lighter that's helping it turn. I think I'm getting it. And so by putting that darker edge in helps make that greenish area look lighter. I think I have the ear too light still. I'm just going to go much darker purple with that, and then I can do touches of light in there if it's still needs to be lighter. But I think overall I need to start darker on some of these things. Again, I'm missing some dark definitions there. And remember what I said, the wings of her nose are slightly lower than where the septum sits. Um, that's, I think, sort of on average. Most people, it's sort of the same, on the same line, if not the septum being a little bit lower. Um, like I said, so it's an interesting part of what gives her her likeness. So, like I said, I need to pay attention to that and make sure that it's those relative shapes are right. And the very tip of her nose has a blue that's just a little bit lighter and brighter. And that's the rub, is getting that brighter. So I have to come in with a really clean blue. It also has a bit of green, slightly on the blue-green side. So I have a mixture of phthalo blue, phthalo emerald, and white. And see if I can hit that. Yeah, and a little bit lower and a little bit lighter, right along that edge. And then it just moves softly into the shadow with a little bit of purple here. That's very close in value to that, but I still know that I need to go make sure it's a little bit darker, but just like one step darker. And I have to make sure that I have her where the light's hitting. I have to make sure that I'm staying dark enough that that reads properly. I think it's I'm in the right range. So also have a really beautiful intense purple, maybe a little bit of blue in it, that's in the corner of her eye here. See if I can get that color right, color range and value. Yeah. So just really trying to be sensitive with the colors and values that I have here. There's a little bit of violet, and I just tried the alizarin permanent there, but I think that it's going to go too gray, and that's definitely too light. So that's where I'm going to have to bring in a little of that quinacridone red with the dioxazine purple and a touch of white to get that. Here I am trying to do a bit more squinting so that I can see where the values change. have the edge of her cheek out too far, so that needs a little adjustment. And there's a little bit of her hairline that's coming down, that's inside the cheek line, but it's also helping to define the outer edge of her cheek. So I'm, for the most part, I'm trying to copy the shapes that are there, but I'm also trying to keep in mind what those things are, so that as I paint them, I make sure that they're all creating that sense of form and relating to the other things that are next to them. I am too dark now with the shadow, and I have to make sure that that's right before I lighten it, um, because remember, my goal was to keep that shadow side, keep it dark enough. Maybe, and underneath the eye though, I can see it's too light, so I want to push that area darker. I have very little black in what I'm painting. Oh. Damn it. Hello. I think we got disconnected again. Let's see if I... Hello? Yes, sorry about that. My, I think our router is probably on its last legs, so that's going to be my next upgrade, is getting a better router. It seems to work fine, and then all of a sudden the Wi-Fi will drop out. So I've almost every router that I've owned has had a similar problem at some point, where it it doesn't keep the Wi-Fi, and you have to restart the Wi-Fi, and but that's not great during a stream. And hopefully, let me double check to make sure that you're hearing me. Um, okay, I see there's two people on, so um, are you still here? Yeah, it says two people are here, but I don't know if you're hearing me. Um, there's a little bit of lag too, so I'm waving my brush. Okay, so at least I see that it's still there. Really sorry. Um, this is going to be a technical thing that I'm going to have to figure out and fix because it's not a real great experience for those trying to watch what I'm doing. And I don't know what that means in terms of the video that I eventually get back from YouTube, whether it has these big gaps in it that I'm going to have to close up, or um, I was talking, describing what I was doing, and I don't even know when the video went out. So um, unfortunately, but mostly what I was talking about is getting the value ranges correct, and also um, trying to keep in my head what the form is doing as I'm painting the different shapes, so I know like this is coming forward in space and then it's making a turn, etc., and keeping all those ideas in mind so that the form turns correctly as I'm painting. Yes, demons, demons. You're right. Um, so so here again, I'm squinting. I can see that I have some accent marks that are too dark, and I'm missing some accents still, but um, it's really easy to get too punchy with those accents. I used to have a terrible habit when I was in art school, is that I wouldn't paint any accents, and then I couldn't figure out why uh, I couldn't get anything to read properly. And I had a teacher say, you you may want to put in some accents in your painting. I was like, huh? I'm not putting in accents? I thought I was. So, so I would have everything painted exactly what I was seeing, but there would be no definition. Not quite the same thing as having it out of focus. It was more like it lacked um, visibility. Like you almost couldn't see it, or it just looked um, too muddy or something. There was almost like you were looking through a veil and couldn't really see what it was. But it did have sharp edges. It just the darkest darks were missing essentially. So there was no punch to anything. So again, this is where I'm squinting. I know I'm missing a lot of the painting, and I know at some point I'm going to have to put all that stuff in rather quickly. The rest of her hair, the background, but I really want to focus in and make sure that these pieces of her face are starting to read properly before I move on. Have this interesting purples that come in here. This is the part of her brow ridge that's pointing down, that's picking up a reddish purple from something. I think it is picking up some of the reflected light off the field or whatever she's standing in from the sunset. So it's a bluish, it's a purple, but it has a touch of red in it, the red from the sunset. That's sometimes what you'll see at the sunset, is that you'll see this bright red light, but you'll also see reds or oranges reflecting back into the shadows also. Um, I am just trying to get, this is really, I'm squinting and I'm looking back and forth and trying to get some of the value changes that are there, I only see when I squint. There's a little bit of, in the middle of the that eye area is slightly lighter patch, but then, and this is what's going to give it some depth, is this part of the eye socket that goes back in space that is pointed down, and it's not getting reflected light, and it's not getting direct light, and there's a point where it does get pretty like a dark purple, almost pure purple right there, and I'm not getting it to quite the intensity that it should, but, and then it very softly transitions out from there, and guess what, I'm missing an accent. I think maybe the reason why I didn't have accents is because partially I didn't put them in because I didn't feel like I had the brush control to put in some of those thinner lines. I've learned over the years that you don't need control as long as you're putting in things in the right order. If you put in a line too thick, you can come in with the next brush stroke overlapping it and make it a little bit thinner. So you can even paint those with fairly thick brushes as long as you're painting the steps in the right order. I'm seeing a little bit of blue reflected light right, or almost feels like it's reflecting straight back at us right in that part of the eye. And then I'm going to have to get the shape of her pupil right. So all of this is just a little bit back and forth fine tuning. It doesn't really look like I'm painting that much, but if I get these things to read right, then it really does start to feel, you start to feel the pieces coming together. Okay, and again, there's really a lot of color changes going on here. There's purples and greens. I invite any of you to try to paint the same painting, and you're welcome to send it to me or post it. If I'm trying to think of, you can go onto Sketchy and download it, or I'm going to put the link to see if I get her name right, Austheia's her Flickr account, and you can get a fairly high-res version of it, and to do a painting from that. So that I think that would make this demo would help make the information more relatable if you've actually tried to paint the same painting with some of the ideas that you don't have to paint in my style, but the idea of controlling those values. So if you're painting that, then you have a much better understanding of what it is that I'm talking about. Yes, I realized that I was painting the highlight of that cheek too low. And I can see a little correction here at the outer edge of her cheek. Actually have that turned too high and too pointy now, but at least it's closer. So at some point I'm going to have to figure out how to put this very light edge that she has here on the outside here. Okay, so Yes, if some people want to get that reference pick now, um, let me just see if I can bring it up real quick and um, put it in the text. And see, yep. So here is the link to her page, and then this is the link to that same photo. I don't know if Randy, if you meant trying to paint it right now, but you can review the video later when you're painting it and sort of try to paint at the same time. Either way will work. But at least you can also bring up the essentially next time. Oh, so next time. Yeah. I'm still trying to understand. Some of you are coming from Instagram, and I can communicate with a bunch of you directly, sort of. I can put a post out that some of you get, but I've been also direct messaging some of you as much as I dare to without getting myself in trouble with Instagram so that they don't shadow ban me or something. But YouTube, I haven't quite figured out. I know I get from some channels that I follow that I do get posted updates, just text, not videos, that are not sent just to me. Obviously, they're sent to everyone that follows, that's a subscriber. And I haven't figured out how to do that yet. I'm a little bit of a newbie, I guess, but that still is a little bit of a challenge for me. So, but what I'm saying is that I'd like to be able to announce the video on through YouTube through that tool, and then at the same time put a reference link to people so that they have a way of getting the reference photo beforehand. And so yes, that would be a great idea. I don't know if it's possible to watch me, listen, and then also work on your own painting. That's much more multitasking than I'm good at. But yeah, so if you can do that. Okay, so there's a lot of shapes that need to be refined in here. And little pieces are missing, like that very dark area underneath her chin. But I am feeling the need to get more of the rest of the painting a little further along. So I will see what I can do. I have to clear off a little bit of my palette if I'm hoping to get some of the clean colors that are in the hair. There goes my voice again. Hold on. Okay. So she has this nice red, purple, orange thing going in the dark side of her hair. Let's see if I can. I think a mixture of the alizarin permanent and the permanent orange together with not too much white in it and more. And I think it's going to have to get a little bit of purple. Ooh, I think I put too much purple to get in a dark enough range. And I'm really trying to load up the brush so that I can overcome some of the tooth that's dragging me a little bit and the absorption. I also want to make sure that I'm getting using some of the brush stroke to describe that, so I can't just scrub the whole thing with one color. I really want to be a little more intentional. Like here, there's just cooler light areas coming through. Okay, Randy would. Sounds like we've got a plan. I'll figure out how to get you the reference photos the day before, and find a way to get it to whoever else would like to paint along. And that will also help me better understand how this YouTube um, notice box works. Okay, so yes, so I want to make sure that the hair is a great place to really show off brushwork because just the way it flows, and you don't really have to match hair perfectly like you do forms in the face. So it's a great place to just loosen up a little bit. Yep, getting that. So she has some cooler reds in here. When I mix white with the quinacridone red, it naturally pushes it even cooler. So I can get those cooler light areas fairly easily just by mixing those two colors together. She does have a dark area in the part of her hair and where it folds over alongside her face. That's mostly purple and black, or I can use almost pure purple. If it doesn't have any white in it, then we'll read close to being black. And then next to that, I want to keep, again, some of that fairly transparent red to get the intensity. Because even pure red, um, just straight red by itself right there is too dark. And so I have to just come in with some of the paint thinner, maybe my paper towel, and pick some of it up. Looks like I got a little bit of some contamination in there too, so I want to make sure that I'm getting the white of the panel coming through the color. Okay, well, I'm going to have to play with that a little bit later. So the sky is a gradation from a little bit of, I'm not even sure I have much on my palette, is the ultramarine blue. Oh, there it is. A lot of white and ultramarine blue. Yep, that's pretty close to what I want. And then it turns to a warmer, lighter color as I go down. So I should have some of that already in my palette. And I want to keep those transitions really soft because this is where I want to make the face come forward. And I can only really do that if I don't have too much distracting detail in the background. And so, and that's just the transition between colors. I'll have to be very soft to do that. Okay. I have about an hour to finish this up, so this is sort of the cue for me to get things moving. Okay, so keeping some of that, some of the paint a little bit wetter is helping me put it down faster. Okay. So, Randy, are you a follower of mine on Instagram, or do I have your um, maybe you can just text me your Instagram handle here so that um, I can pick it up at some point, or you can direct message me on Instagram too. It's probably the easiest way, and then I can direct message you back with the next image. I haven't picked it out yet, but um, I start to think about the image that I'm going to paint maybe 3 or 4 days beforehand. So I need a little time to plan for it, make sure I have the panel primed, and I want to start advertising it. So the last couple um, live streams, I've made a little announcement video, and I put the picture that I'm going to paint in the video. So um, I that picking it out a little bit earlier is helpful. So here's might be worth being a little more exact with some of the folds of the hair because has this nice dimension to it, and if I um, really control that, then you can really feel then the layers of hair wrapping around her head, and I like it when that works well. Sorry. Okay. I am starting to see this. So I can see that I don't have certain values here dark enough. Now I'm starting to get rid of most of the white. I can start to see where the values are working and where they're off. Um, okay. I see Randy's giving me some pointers, but I can't quite. Let me see. It seems like the black outline on the right side of the face is a little thick, maybe even not shown right at the shine of the cheek. Just asking. Well, there's a lot of things there that still need adjustment. So you're saying right in here, but I know I need to come back in and adjust some of those things. Like I said, right now I'm going to just try to get um, some of the sky and some of the areas that it still have white in them to get those covered up, and then what that's going to show me pretty quickly is where my values are off. I got too much of my color contaminated here, so I need to do a little cleanup on my palette. At some point too, I'm going to try to do a setup where you see the palette much better. That's going to be a more advanced streamings. Not quite there yet. Um, but I think each streaming that I do, I'll try to be tackling some of the technical issues so that over time the streaming quality should be much more improved. I need a minute to get more white out on my palette because I'm running low. Got 45 minutes to go. I think that I'm in good shape. It's not looking quite like her yet, but I can see where some of the features are off a little bit, and I know those are things that I can adjust given enough time. So I'm going to try to work rather efficiently to get this closer to finish. So this is where I want some of the transparent reds for the hair that I can, if I use enough thinner, I can get that level of intensity. A little bit of my issue here is that I'm using the same thinner Gamsol to clean my brushes and to thin my paint. And so what's happens is that every time I add a little bit thinner to the paint, it's also has all the colors that I've cleaned off of the brushes. So if I really do want to get really clean transparencies, then I have to come up with a second receptacle. Right now, it's the thinner is clean enough to do most of the job, and so I'm not hurt too badly by that contamination of the thinner. But in some of these transparent areas, you only kind of get one shot, so I'm just taking a risk that it's going to work. Some of that you can do if you have the time to work it out. But like I said, I'm trying to work efficiently, and so that means some of these things are just going to have to suffer a little bit. Okay. Okay. Part of an issue that I'm having is because of I'm putting this reference photo in a place where it's easier for you to see it. It's just a little bit harder for me to see it, and I'm getting some reflected light into the monitor where I need to be able to see the colors a little bit better. And which brings me to a little point that I want to make for those beginning painters. There's try to make your setup however you're working in a way um, that you're not fighting against the whole time. Um, if you have poor lighting on your palette and on your panel or canvas, then that's going to make it really hard to make decisions. If you don't have balanced light and if you don't have enough light, then um, you're going to work on a painting and think that it's exactly the way you want it, and then you're going to take your painting and move it somewhere else, and it's just going to look terrible. Um, that's a consequence of not having good lighting in your studio. The problem I was mentioning right now is that I'm getting too much reflected light into my monitor, and I can change my lighting setup to get less. Um, it's actually, I'm getting the reflection off the top of my white desk and any light object that's sitting on there reflecting from that monitor. And usually the monitor is pointing straight back at me. I am actually going to shift it a little bit so that I can just see better. You won't be able to see that picture quite as well, but it really does help me. And now I can see some things that are really off in my drawing. That's really helped. So bad for you, good for me. So, but that's okay. I am just again doing the old squinting thing. The squinting is the best. So I've used very little black in this whole painting, but there's some spots that just need a little more punch. And okay. So what I'm going to be doing the rest of the painting is either adding definition or adjusting the features to match the photo. And I don't need it to be exact. What I just need is the overall sense of it to be right, to feel right. So that may be that I'm putting down some strokes that are going to destroy some of the detail that's there, but it doesn't matter because what I want is the overall effect. And if the overall effect isn't there, it doesn't matter how much detail you have. If I squint and it doesn't look like the photo looks like, then I have an issue. So so since I have about 40 minutes, if I do that, just that for the next 40 minutes, um, then I think the painting is going to be exactly where I need it to be. And that's the advantage of now that I've covered over, well, almost covered over. I have a little bit of sky here that I didn't do anything with, and want to get enough blue. And okay, that is not where I wanted it, but I can fix some of that later. Okay, so I knocked back some of the white coming through. Okay, so it's all about getting everything to read properly at this point. So again, I'm comparing and adjusting. I see a color that's in the photo or a value that I don't have in the painting, then that's what I'm going to try to paint. So there's blues there that I have far too green and too light, so I'm adjusting them. And then I have a whole lot of purple coming in there. And again, I'm squinting the whole time. My face is just like a fist right now, all scrunched up, because I just need to keep on squinting to see those very subtle transitions. Now, I have something too dark there, that purple. That's really a much softer transition. Speaking of softer transitions, I lost that dark area in here. And losing a little bit of my purple. Don't have enough purple on my palette to do that. And okay, so now I can see too that I have the angle of the nose a little bit off, so I'm going to start correcting that. That's going to give her a little bit more of the likeness. Have some of the reflected sky in this area right here that's pointing up. Then I lost that really rich blue that I had next to that. So let's see if I can get that back. Not dark enough. Okay. Got like 50 colors on my brush and they're not coming in the order that I want. But sometimes it's not bad having a bunch of different colors on a brush and just it gives you a nice textural stroke as you lay it down. But I wasn't getting quite what I wanted from that. Okay, and I got a comment from Randy, daughter of the Supreme Court, while watching Richard Smith paint, made a comment, there's nothing like watching a pro in action. What do you think of that? It's appropriate here. Um, okay, well, thank you, I guess. Assuming that it all comes out right in the end, then you can say that I was being professional. If it just comes out as a big mess, then maybe not, but we'll see. Okay, this is where I need my black. So I lost a lot of my definition there in the eye, but that's because it wasn't reading properly. And so really the eye is just really kind of this dark almond shape, and then just has a hit of sky highlight in the top, and that is and that's kind of what I was missing there. All that stuff that's going on in the eye, there's a little bit of dark blue light in the light here, and there's a little bit of even darker blue in the iris. And all those are so close together, I could paint them black and the whole thing would still work. But if I have the time and the control, then I can put in those elements, but not if at the expense of the overall feeling of the eye. Even the tear duct is probably close to black, but just a little bit redder. And then that lower eyelid is pretty dark. And I think actually now I'm just getting into where the point where it's starting to read like it should. To have a touch of light right here. And then I have something like a black around the outer edges of the iris. And too light. Okay. So that's starting to read properly. And then I can start to adjust other shapes around it. Okay, so that's the only place in the painting that I'm really liking so far, have to say. But it gives me at least a starting point to adjust things from. So make sure that I'm keeping some of that detail here. Okay. Need a little transitional color on the top of the brow, which is picking up just a little bit of the blue from the sky, but it's reading through the hair there, and unless I paint every hair, I'm not really going to get that right feeling there. And I don't really want to get into the business of painting every hair, so if I can find some of those colors that are going to help describe the form that are more general, that's going to be great. Okay, so I want to make sure that she getting her nostril dark enough here, and that's really a reddish purple color, even though its reading is almost black. Hopefully I'm putting it in the right place. Make sure that it drops low enough in that spot. That's a little bit too low, but I can adjust. Okay, so just really like looking back and forth, seeing where I'm furthest off in the painting. There's almost a little bit of hint of green coming up higher here. And I'm going to push that ear back a little bit. Where her hair covers her ear, it's making a little bit of a shadow. And almost like a purple color on the ear itself. And then behind the ear is really a strong black. I think I just cut that a little bit too much. So I'm going to adjust with a light red, purple, violet color. Don't know how else to describe that. Okay. So that's starting to read right in space. The hair over it is not dark enough, and then the shadow itself, which I was saying was casting a purple shadow, isn't dark enough. And then the hair itself, I'm starting to run out of some colors of paint, so hopefully I can get some paint out quickly, so not to slow me down too much. I need a little bit of dioxazine purple. You're in here somewhere, I know it. Purple. Okay, I'm not finding it right away, but I'm down to the last half hour, so I'm feeling a little bit panicked. That looks like permanent crimson. And this is where I dump everything out on the floor. Oh, there you are. Okay. Can clean this up later. Not such a big deal. Okay, got lots more purple. And I think I have enough of most of the other colors. Okay. This is where I needed the purple for over here to get almost something like a black. Okay, and the purple is going to help me too to find some of these shapes that I'm missing in the hair and get sort of those darting hair, wisps of hair coming in and out. And, okay. Okay, and then her other eye looks terrible right now. Looks like she has some kind of eye disease going on. So maybe I can get that working quickly. First of all, the white of her eye is definitely too light. So need to knock that back with some bluish green. A little bit too dark, but that's okay. And she's getting the light from the sunset kind of reflecting through her eye. It's kind of an interesting effect. It's kind of weird in relationship to the other eye, which is reading blue, and then this one's reading orange and red. And I'm losing the pupil of her eye. There. Okay, and then she has just a weird little highlight there. I say weird because it's not usually where you would see it, but and one up here. Okay. Those I may have hit a little bit too hard, but we can carve into them. Okay. And then I'm going to use purple for the eyelashes. And so now that eye is starting to read. Again, some weird reddish colors coming in there in the light white part of her eye on the far side. That just may be too hard for me to get the intensity of color, but you know what? I don't need it to be such a bright red in that spot to read properly. I just need it to be the right value because it's just such a small area, and it may be better actually pushing that towards blue so that it isn't reading as her eyes being so bloodshot, which is kind of how it looks in the photo. And I want a little bit more ultramarine-ish blue in the whites of the eye, not so green. Okay. So, and then I have to get her lower lid in the right spot. That's sort of a dark red, purple, and then a little bit of purple coming in on the underside. That's actually a fairly clean purple, but I need to keep dark enough. A little bit too dark. So this, like I said, they have to be, really fine-tune the relationship of the values for some of these areas to read properly. There's right near the eye is lighter, but then it gets darker again. You can sort of see in the eye socket shape. And then you have that light part of her nose, the part that's reflecting or picking up the key light of the sunset. And then you have that transitioning out along the top of her cheek and sort of creating an edge of that shadow there. I don't have it quite the right shape yet, but I'll get there. Okay. Got to make those transitions a little softer. And okay, and then the edge of the eye has to be restated. Okay, it's not perfect, but it's going to have to do for now. Just as long as it's reading pretty close. Just think I need to pull some paint up, and it will be good. So Now I need to get that lights in the cheek area reading right. And I can go right there. I went a little bit um, warmer orange than it actually is, but that's okay. It just reinforces the warmth of that light. Not getting the right shape yet of that, the reflection there, and that's our brightest yellow in the painting. And to emphasize that yellow, I'm going to put some cooler, slightly cooler red around it. So I can see now that I have some of these value relationships are starting to work and are in the right place, that I'm starting to get the effect of the light. It's taken me a while to get there, but some of the things are starting to feel like reflections. Quick question, Brandy. Number two brush on the eye you just did. I have no idea. This is a worn down filbert brush that I've got at the local arts and craftsman store. They usually have a wide selection of brushes that are on sale for $1 or $2, and I just pick up a bunch, and I never really look at the number, so couldn't tell you for sure, but it does seem like a number two or number three brush. I want to restate some of those lights along her nose. And there's a little bit of a purple defining the outer edge. Don't want to go too dark with that, but dark enough. Okay, and I don't have that nostril quite high enough yet. It's a little bit of a hotter red, darker red coming in around the nostril. Do you know what I'm going to do? Is I'm just going to paint it red. Oh yes, that is it. And then I'm going to paint some purple right into that, because that's the only way I'm going to get enough red in there. And then I have red on the bottom too. Okay, and now that philtrum here, the shape of the channels underneath her nose, I have to fix that. She has some sky reflecting on the edge underneath her nostril. That's helping point those forms upward visually. And then the bottom of her nostril does that um, flange or wing of her nostril does drop down even lower. That's why I was saying those shapes in relationship to each other. Um, and still have to refine those a little bit. This is the tough part of getting things to read properly, is some of those shapes are so small, and I'm reluctant to whip out really tiny brushes, so I'm using just the edge of the brush that I'm working with, and trying to get those very exact forms. They're not too far off. They're just not, um, like I said, those forms are so small, and you do have to be kind of exact to get the exactness of them. That it does take a little patience to get them to read in the right place. Okay, about 10 minutes here to go. If I can pull this all together, I will. Let's make it 15 minutes. Okay, I'm going to cheat and use some blending as long as it doesn't become over blended. And as long as I'm coming back in with some of the colors that I need, that little bit of blue around the eye. Little blue here, lower eyelid. So I just was reading a little bit too dark. And then that dark fold underneath I actually had too high, so now that's where I want it. And now that form is starting to read a little bit better, like it is actually folds in the skin. And the cheek, that blue just comes up right underneath that. Okay, that's starting to read properly. What I'm not getting is that reflected light in the top of the cheek and where the cheek starts to turn down. Not really getting that transition right. And I know that the cheek turns down right here, and it's actually a little bit of a grayish color. I don't know how I'm going to get that gray right. It's a blue-gray. And everything on my palette right now looks blue-gray, so that's too green. So I now have to go more purple. And that looks right. And then we have this other form here that should face forward. So it's slightly darker purple. And if that turns forward, then the lip then is also pointing in a different direction and has a little bit more lightness to it. So there's lots of value changes in here. I could spend eternity adjusting them all. But what I basically need is the form overall to be turning in the right direction. And so I almost have to ignore all the smaller value changes as long as I'm getting the ones that are actually doing what I need, which is to get the overall sense of the form. So like here in the jaw, I have a kind of a slow turn here. Between here and here, I have this gradation that needs to be slow, and then it's a little faster here. And then if I punch, there's the bottom of the chin that turns more quickly, that sticks out forward, and I need that to just be a little bit darker. So the overall effect is I need to get this thing to move forward in space. And so it's by getting the relative values right there. And I have something, a little bit of a coarse shadow right here. Sort of small, but it's there. And I have a very bright red that's coming here. I may even go a little bit too dark with that so that I'm getting the right amount of intensity. And I quickly need to adjust my bottom lip. I'm not even close to where it needs to be because it's just reading much thinner than it actually is, partially because I don't have the right value structure. If you take away anything from this tonight, it's about getting your value structures correct to get the form to read correctly. You could do the same painting in black and white. It doesn't have to be in color, but those values have to be correct for it to work. Um, Getting a nice, I really want to get this. There's a reflected light in the middle of her lip, lower lip, and that's very blue. It's reflecting, again, it's reflecting the sky. And that's against the reds and purples around it. And you can see her teeth in the separation of the mouth, but I have that way, way, way too light. So that has to go much darker. And then it's surrounded by um, kind of a purple accent. And then in the upper lip, you're only really getting a touch of the sunlight hitting it just in that one little spot in the sort of near the cupid's bow of the lip, that center form. That's the only part that's really getting something like a pure red, and but then a little bit lighter. So I'm going to go with orange just to get that the right amount of intensity. And then on the upper edge of the lip is um, almost something close to white, where it would naturally be white, but it has red in it. But I'm just going to pull out the white. Okay, so where are we drastically off here? Because those are the things that I need to correct as quickly as possible. I've got parts of this lip that are too dark and parts that are too light. So I have the light hitting very strong orange, light orange right here. And then I have the rest of the upper lip, which should be kind of like a reddish purple. And I have that too light. So I guess more like a mauve color coming in darker. That is much better. And that's also the color that I'm having right around here. Okay, and so I'm missing, remember I said the edge of her cheek had the strong light color. I'm just going to go with my quinacridone red mixed with white and see if I can get it light enough with enough color. Maybe throw a little bit of orange in there and see if it's not perfect, but it is starting to read the way I want it to. It just needs to be a color or value change right along that edge so that you get the sense that the form is turning away from you and also positioned towards the light so it's catching the light. And that will um, help, again, create that sense of form because you need you need that form to be moving away from you, visually moving around, away from you. I think I need some black in here. The purple is just reading too colorful. Okay, I'm missing still some things. Okay, let's see if I can pull this thing together in the next 5 minutes. It's not horrible, but I just feel like I haven't really had a chance to kind of sit back and really figure out what needs to be done to get this thing to work. Lots of clean colors in here. They're going to take me too long to mix. Gonna knock some color down. Okay. Okay, sorry for the quiet treatment. I'm just trying to evaluate quickly these things. Okay, need to move her nostril over just a little bit. Okay, that helped. Okay, I think this is about as far as I'm gonna get it live. I'm gonna take it offline and do a little bit of adjusting, but um, nothing, nothing too drastic. And then I'll post that on Instagram, the finished version, by the morning. Thank you all for joining in. I'm just going to throw a quick signature on here. Great. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming in and watching. And I'm going to do this again next week. You're welcome to tune in again. And I'll send Randy a photo the next time. And whoever else wants one in advance, you can let me know. You can direct messenger me on Instagram. Anyway, thank you, and I'll see you next week. Great.